power of love, the power of love. Come and listen to the stories that change the way that you see, the things that you hear will help you to feel empowered every day.
Hello and welcome to this episode of The Power of Love, exploring the most powerful force on earth. I'm Mia Saenz, your host, and in this episode with me is Barry Selby. I've known Barry for a ton of years. He's a very dear friend of mine. So first of all, welcome, Barry. And then I'm going to get into sharing about you. There's several things that we pick out as we develop our friendships and our colleagues and our workspace or our life or whatever. There's certain things about people that we just adore. And so I always love to share the things that have touched me about someone so that you can see them in a different light. And I love that Barry is so kind-hearted and that he actually does the work himself to elevate himself so that he's there for his people, both men and women. I love that he's a spiritual psychologist. I love that he's a spiritual metaphysical practitioner with the Agape for years. These are things that are his accolades that I think are beautiful. And I think they're beautiful because some of them are mine too. See, this is why we're friends. So Barry, welcome, and let's talk about heartbreak to wholeness, which is your concept of you work with both men and with women. And originally, he was focusing his work on women, and he's expanded in the last couple of years to men. And the reason I love Barry and the way he sees things is because he was a champion of women, and now he's also a brother, a champion of men. And so it's really important for me to have somebody that willing and committed to support others. So enough of all that beautiful stuff. Let's get to the meat and the potatoes.
All right, then.
That is the meat and the potatoes. Actually, I gave them the gravy first, right? That's awesome. All right, so let's talk about healing past wounds to begin to love again, because that's a really dark space for people, right? They may not even recognize that they need to heal yet. So let's talk about that, but let's first talk about what are some of the awareness signs that people should be aware of to open up, that they might want to open up to love again.
Well, the simplest thing to look out for is that things aren't working for you. That's really the simplest way of putting it. Right. Really, for me, and thank you for those wonderful gravy you gave out for me. The thing is that what I became very aware of, what I've also learned from, and some other people I've listened to who speak about this as well, is that the thing about when we go through breakups, whether it's divorce or a relationship divestment, is that we don't automatically reset and start over. It's not something we're built for as human beings, because we feel, we have emotions, regardless of gender or polarity even. We carry emotions within us. And when a relationship ends abruptly, especially if we're not the one that started it, even if we are, though, to a degree, but when we're not the person who chose to end it, oftentimes we feel adrift. You know, we feel cut off. We feel alone, basically. And so, yes, it can feel dark, but the reality is it's more that the light we thought was shining has just been turned off for a second. But the illusion is it's the other person's light that made the difference. Mm-hmm. The reality is it's the light we have inside. I'm not going to sound metaphysical now, but the reality is it's our own, say, neglect of loving ourselves fully that lets us feel more depressed, more alone, more rejected. So one of the pieces of the puzzle for me is, and especially about love being the theme in this series, is that we forget to apply the loving to ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know, we're so externally referenced. And the second piece I want to add to that is also there's a term about, time heals all wounds. Well, physically, maybe, but emotionally, I disagree. I think time just numbs emotional wounds because we just neglect them. Mm-hmm. And yes, it does require rolling up your sleeves and looking at what's been in the way of you loving fully, because this is the piece that when we don't heal our emotional wounding, upset, hurt feelings, then that's less of us available to love somebody else. So we don't actually have all the love available. So there's a lot of benefits to actually facing ourselves, rolling up the sleeves, and learning how to fix, resolve, make peace with those issues.
Yeah. When you first started talking, what I heard was depression. People get depressed and they don't realize what they really need to seek is love, right? That's part of it, is whether it's the self-love, whether it's the connected love, whether it's with partnership, friendship, unconditional, whatever it is, that's a space in which to look. I know when I was dealing with the dark night of my soul a couple years ago, in and out of cancer, I didn't know what I was missing, but what I did know, but I didn't know. What I kept saying was, please show me unconditional love, to the universe, to God. And so that's where I took my journey. I've been on the love journey my whole life, but that's where I took, and my world opened up differently. So it's really interesting to me that elements, or the fragments that you were talking about, how people are feeling, is also that sense of depression, right? They're not connected to themselves.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, the thing is, I scared. I don't like using the term depression because there's such an onus on it and such a medical thing that keeps being put on it. The reality is it's more of a disconnection,
right?
Which is more of an accurate statement. So it may feel like you're depressed, as in pressed down, but really what it is a lack of connection to love, either internally or externally. So what you said is so right on. You're dealing with, the C word versus relationship breakup, but the same elements come to play, which is feeling isolated.
What's the C word? I'm so sorry. I forgot.
Cancer.
What's this? Connection?
No, cancer.
Oh, cancer. Okay. I'm like, what's the word?
I was being polite. But
well, no, that's good. I forgot about it, right? That's real healing.
Nicely done. So getting back to the point, I love this. Is the recognition is that whether it is a medical situation like cancer or it's a relationship breakup, a lot of the same elements come into play, which is feeling of isolation and separation. I know when people go through medical stuff, one of the first things they don't do is reach out to their friends. They don't reach out to get love. And when they go through divorce or breakup, many people, not everybody, but many people tend to isolate, get the Haagen-Dazs and the TV and shut the doors, close the drapes, and lock up, hide away.
I don't mean
because
to laugh, but that was funny.
Well, that's the visual I use because so many people do that on some level. I did it on different times. So I'm not saying it's other people, it's all of us.
Right. It is. It just sounded funny to actually hear it.
Oh, did I help you?
No, I think it's perfect because, it's like when you have that reaction like I had, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I've been there. I'm speaking from experience. Wasn't Haagen-Dazs, but, but that sense of, though, we want to basically, what it is almost trying to seek comfort from a much smaller place of who we are versus the fullness of who we are. So yes, depression is the sense that we are disowning our fullness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one like that.
You also had said that paraphrase of that slogan, time heals all wounds, and you said it actually does, and it makes you numb. I want us to look at that because humanity pushes off, right? We push off and hide the things that aren't pretty, and we try to expose a prettier view without actually understanding in concept that's great, that's right, but what people are forgetting to do is to actually do the healing work as they're putting themselves out there so that they're truly getting healed. And It's not a fake it till you make it. I know people say that, and I guess you can play with that, but work on more of the making it than the faking it. Right? Because then it will become who you are if your desire or your intention is there.
Well, let's put it this way, as an analogy about making things pretty again. I love to use the analogy about painting over rust. Anybody's ever had a bike or a car where rust is coming through? Of course, in LA, it's not so. I mean, I live in LA. There isn't much rust. It's so dry here. But you live in like Florida or New York or the Midwest or other parts of the world where there's rain. Yeah. If you have a car, especially if you get a scratch, rust tends to come through. Some people think the cure for that is to cover it up with paint. That's the prettifying when things aren't really solid. So, but what happens is the only way to remove the rust is not covering it up, but to sand it down, to actually do the physical work to clear off the rust in the first place, back to safe, clean, ready metal again. So you then paint properly, and then you're okay. So putting that into the emotional space, the same thing is true when we are feeling like we should just put on a happy face and go to Disneyland and forget about everything. It works until you get home again and realize when you're alone on your own, those feelings start bubbling up again. It's like the rust is coming up. So until you do the work to make peace with, not to remove, but to make peace with those emotions, to heal them, and to heal your own heart that's been wounded, then that the only way to get through it is to do that. Then you'll have a clean slate, so to speak, to start over.
Such masculine words. You got to sand off the rust. Down to the rust. I love that. That's a very good analogy. I want to talk about bathroom ceilings now. Because if people aren't careful, they grow mold, and the same concept. You can't clean it, and I'm experiencing that in a rental at the moment. And so that's why it's the same concept. You can't just cover it up. You have to remove it, right? In order to get to the root of what the problem is, right? So whether it's rust, whether it's bathroom mold, or whether it's you, individually, it literally is the way to go to seek within, is to sand down the rust and have a look-see. I'm so girly today with you as you're talking about this masculine stuff. And the viewers are like, we're into the masculine, and now she's being girly. So what are some tools that people can utilize in the analogy of sanding down the rust? How can they get in to see themselves so that they can have this look?
Well, the first thing is always take a look. I mean, I call it awareness, which is what I'm talking about here, is that most people probably know on some level they haven't dealt with it, that past situation, that history, that pain, but they're not looking at it. They're just like turning their head, like almost like putting ostrich putting head in the sand sort of idea. It's like, I'm just not going to deal with it. I'm going to move on. I'll be fine. So the first thing is to stop avoiding it and to look at it, to see what is that you're not haven't been willing to face. Because if you don't look at it, there's no way of fixing it.
Right.
So first take a look, and some other tools I recommend along the way. Part of it is, it's going to sound silly, is realize it's not as bad as it was. Most of us tend to, I was going to say dramatify, that's not a word, but dramatize, that's a better word. Dramatize a situation as being a lot worse than it really was, because that's what scares us to look at it. We're afraid to look back at what we think is so bad, but when we look at it really, clearly, honest look at things, you start realizing it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, because we over dramatized. So that's the first step. The second piece of it is then, okay, what do you do about that? And with the work I do with my clients, a lot of times it's dealing with the false beliefs we take on, the perceptions, judgments, and blame we put on ourselves, and then of course the blame we put on the other person, because, well, how dare they do those things, or whatever that was. So start to really take apart those piled on beliefs and rules we've made up about something that's not real and not needed. And then part of that is doing forgiveness work, which is one of my deep passions, to help people forgive themselves, because we need to let ourselves off the hook. We spend so much time layering on the judgments and blame on ourselves. It's a wonder we can love ourselves, or anybody else for that matter. So forgiveness is the key to the door to let ourselves out of that jail. That's some of the piece I work with. And then the other part is once you start healing, what do you want to do with that? What's the vision you want to create? Where do you want to go with that? Because again, working from the beginning, when you don't heal it, you can't look very far. But when you really open up and heal those wounds, that baggage, so to speak, you make peace with it, your vision gets clearer, and you can make much bigger strides to where you want to go.
The shadow work and the inner child work is so powerful to shift and change these spaces, these awarenesses, what is actually going on, right? And it's not to negate anybody who's new into this. It's not to negate your pain. It's not. It's to take you out of it and to the other side. And there are situations, I just want to state, that have been brutal for some people, right? And that's not about negating any of this, guys. This is about showing you that even the worst of the worst, we've blown it really out of proportion, and we can shift and change the energy of that. So
one of the biggest pieces for me, working with anybody as a coach, like if I'm working with a coach as being one myself, is to really create that place of safety, because the range of possibility the client's gone through may not match what I've been through, but I have the space and the love and the healing I've had. to be able to hold space safe enough for somebody else to feel comfortable enough to risk being open with me. And that's kind of one of my gifts I bring to my clients. I know you do too. So it's vital that if you are a person who's just starting this journey, seek out somebody who's done enough of the work themselves that you can feel safe with. Not their marketing, not them convincing you, but where do you feel really trustable? We can trust the person to hold a safe space for you. That's vital for this work.
Yeah. And in your anyone in any of your conversations with a teacher or coach that supports this, you will know right away if you resonate with them. Who cares what they have on their website? Literally, Barry and I have both been in this business over 15 years. So who cares what the website is? How do you actually react to them? And how does it benefit you? How are you feeling? Yeah, this is really so deep and so rich, because the healing actually is on these little wounds that if we don't heal them, they're going to magnetize or grow or shift or transform into a totally different space than we actually ever thought that, we needed to go into
Right.
that space. And so literally healing them will stop, and it also teaches you how to heal other stuff as it goes along the way. So I'm a big proponent of this interpersonal work. I love it. Yeah. And it's so important. So I encourage you all to look at what your story is and shift and move through that. So can you give us one healing tool that you would suggest people do in order to either look at their trauma for the first time, or how to begin to move through it?
I'm going to give those watching this something very simple but very easy. And it's because it sounds simplistic initially, but I'll explain why I'm saying this. Is when stuff comes up, when feelings come up, when upsets show up, when you start looking back in the history, you start, oh no, don't look at that. Just stop, take a breath, and put your hand over your heart. I mean, this is going to sound so simple, but the power is amazing. Is we don't connect to ourselves very often, especially men. Okay, let me say these the men, especially on this one. Women do it better than men do, just to be clear. I know that from being a man working with women. I've seen this and working with men too. But if we take the time to put a hand over our heart, to breathe and remember who we are, because the thing about all that trauma, that pain, that suffering, here's a little secret. Who we are now is bigger than all of that because of who we are now. It's just physics. We've gotten bigger, we've gotten stronger. So those wounds we carry around inside are within us, perhaps. They may be hurting us, perhaps. But the reality is they're smaller than who we are. So when we remember who we are by putting a hand over our chest, over our heart, and loving ourselves, it's kind of a touchstone or a heuristic in a way. It's just putting ourselves in a place where we can go, you know what? I can face this. I have the love, I have the space, I have the compassion for myself. I can actually find help or face this myself, or just simply make peace with it where it is now and then come back to it later on.
Yeah.
Not like don't let it through. I'm going to avoid it. That's the ineffective way of doing it.
And this touchstone is so important. Yes. To try it, not in front of everybody, not unless you want to, but even by yourself when you're feeling a sorrow or something, to just connect to yourself on that level is so important, isn't it?
It is. It's such, and I say it sounds so simple because we think it's so simple. It doesn't mean anything. No, simplicity is that it does work, and the ease of that. Yes, of course. If it keeps coming up, seek out help. Get someone who can help you through that process. You can be free of it. But in the meantime, that's what we can use.
Most of us coaches have become coaches because when we wanted to work with people, but then we saturated ourselves with going and experiencing other coaches, and we still use them to elevate us as we go along. So we love coaches for sure. This is a lovey-dovey coach thing. A vision came to me when you were just talking about, when you were talking about touchstones, and I saw something that I just want to share with you guys. In any healing work, do whatever comes up for you, utilize that in your healing work. I've worked with people, other coaches who have used things where they would put it in, and I've done this type of stuff too, where they would put it in to create like a bonfire of old stories or messages, and then they would blow it up or they would bring lots of flowers and blow it up, something dramatic. And
Yeah.
it can be whatever you want. But what I love to, as you were talking, I saw all these stories in a piñata, and I was going to say, just open up that space and just let it go, let that shit go. And so I could see this piñata opening up from the bottom and everything just leaving. So whatever supports you guys in moving forward, you can use a visual, you can pretend your story is a piece of candy in the piñata, or even a storyline, right? And as it gets smashed open, it disappears, it releases. So, and it doesn't mean you have to go around your house breaking things or smashing things. It's a metaphorical within yourself that supports your journey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm also seeing, I guess because we're talking about masculine stuff, I'm seeing a boxing ring. So again, it's not about the violence of shifting and moving. Some people think that because their childhood was so abusive or sexually abusive, that there's no way out. So you don't have to destroy your life. This is where you get to recreate that experience. And one who has had childhood abuse like that, there is a way out, just so you know. It's through you. It's through the beauty of you and honoring that beauty within yourself. And no one story, and please don't be offended, everybody, because I've had the worst of the worst. But I also have the best of the best. Not one story is greater than anybody else's or less than anybody else's. Everything is equal and it's healable.
Yeah. That's the thing is that, first of all, that boxing thing, as masculinity shows up, it sometimes becomes this combative energy. But as I said earlier about the fact when you put your hand over your heart and you start to feel that you're bigger and you're now in presence, you're actually bigger than anything else before it. There's no point getting in the ring because you know you're going to win. Maybe you want to get in the ring just to say, oh, I can win. Okay, now get out of the ring. You're done. You know the lesson. So then it starts to face yourself and heal from that place of wholeness that you're already bigger than what the pain is. And yes, what you said about that upbringing is everyone's upbringing is different, but yours is personal to you. So yours is the greatest pain for you because someone else's pain that may documentary be wise bigger than yours doesn't affect you like the one that's inside of your own heart. So definitely recognize that it's not about being less than or worse than or better than. The pain you're facing, the wounding you're looking at, your history that you're not sure how to face, it cannot run your life unless you let it, first of all. Secondly, it is part of the healing by simply facing it, because everything that got you where you are now is part of you. So if you're doing well in life or you have a great relationship, maybe not, that's what we're talking about here as well. The ultimate piece is that you are greater than what happened before. And rather than ignore it, it's time to actually open it up, because that energy that's tied up there is available to you when you do the work. So you can be even stronger, more free, more whole, more happy, more mobile, even more able to do things. So it's worth doing the work.
Learn to let it go, everybody, because do the work, because that's where your life shifts and changes and your energy levels become abundant to attract what you want. Yeah. Through that space of love. That's why love is the most powerful force on earth. It's healing, it's connective, it's nurturing, it's everything that you absolutely want in your life, including freedom, literally. That's the way to get to freedom is through the space of love. Beautiful. Yeah. Why don't you share with us your free gift, which is, well, I'll let you share it. I get to share your free gift too.
Well, as I've been talking for the last amount of time in this talk, this is kind of a passion project for me. This whole focus about healing to transform. And I've had a lot of conversations with clients and with peers about, especially a lot of people going to post-divorce, where they're carrying all that wounds and everything else. And in fact, post-breakup, I've been through a few breakups myself. There is that gap of time where we don't do the work or we don't face what's in front. So I've basically been building for a while now, and I'm putting into final pieces together a program which is the working title basically is Love After Heartbreak. Again, love being the most powerful agent. So this new offering, I'm putting the final touches to, that's the word, touches to it. So my free gift, in fact, is if you opt in, and the link will be available. When you opt in by putting a name and email address in on that page, I'll reach out to you and we'll have a conversation. Maybe you'll be a match for the program, maybe you won't. But let's have a conversation to see, one, if what you want fits what I'm offering, if what I'm offering fits what you want, both sides. But also if you want to check out something else I have. So my gift is time of mine to help you see where you want to go and if I can help you.
And I'm going to share this again, as I did in some of the other talks that we did. Barry was one of the teachers in the Self-Love Revolution classroom. When we needed people to support, we had 15 different teachers in there rotating to support people every day during the pandemic. And so what we found, the feedback is, people are still giving us feedback now, and especially now because they're missing the daily teachings, is they love to learn from new people. So that's why I think that this is a good opportunity to take advantage if you're interested in what Barry's offering, because it might be a totally new perspective for you. And that is where our education comes from.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. And so how else can they reach you? I know that too, but I'm going to let you say it.
Well, I have a website, which of course that page is on my website. So Barry Selby, my name is barryselby.com is a website. My book is on there, online courses, some teaching videos, and a bunch of other stuff too. You can join my email list and keep in touch with what I'm doing. I have a podcast. I have a videos show that I do as well. So if you find out where I am and find me, you'll get lots of free stuff as well. So reach out, get support. I'm here to help you. This is my love and passion too, because having been through this journey myself, it's so much of a gift for me to give to other people.
Beautiful, thank you. And remember also, the credits at the end will have this written in there besides the email. So what would you like to leave us with? If you had one thing to say to everybody, what would that be?
One thing?
Two things.
Well, I'll say what comes up right away is for you watching this, you are magnificent. And you may have forgotten that. So what we've been talking about this last bunch of time in this conversation, in fact, all the other speakers, I'm sure, are saying the same thing, is that what we're talking about is remembering your magnificence and then letting go of the stuff that's in the way of that. So you have the ability, and again, you are much more powerful, potent, and full now than you ever were. So anything that's in the way of that doesn't have the power to stop you. So remember your magnificence, do the work, love yourself, seriously, put the love inside, and watch your life transform.
I love that. Really beautiful message. Thank you. And thank you, Barry, for joining us. It was lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you again soon.